everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York, a new chapter in the long-running saga. Things needed to make her case to Florida voters last night that she should be taking the seat from current Senator Marco Rubio. The two clashed on a number of topics, including gun violence and abortion rights. The Democratic nominee, Congresswoman Val Demings, is our next guest. Plus, are Democrats doing enough to keep abortion top of voters' minds? Has the fight to expand voting access fallen from the conversation? Has the country reached a limit on what it believes we can do to prevent gun violence? There's so many issues so important to voters this year. We'll talk about the messaging and what's getting through and what can be done in the final 3 weeks. One voice who's spoken out on all these topics is our friend Jasmine Crockett. She'll join our political conversation coming up. Later in the program, the wheels of justice indeed move slowly, but they're moving. The ex-president's attempts to subvert justice are finally starting to catch up with him. We'll tell you about that, all those stories and more when Deadline White House continues after a quick break. Don't go anywhere today. A little smackdown there for little Marco. Some spirited moments from last night's first and only debate between Marco Rubio and the person working to take a seat from him, Congress. And if any of them are basing their vote on gun safety measures, this exchange from last night will likely be on their minds when they go to vote. A moment to remember. About the possibility that in some places Democrats risk losing some momentum heading into November's elections. But that's not the whole story. There's plenty of time to turn around momentum. Our political panel will weigh in on that, on messaging needed to get Democrats out on top. Don't go anywhere.
You know, it's funny because
Wait, first, it's so nice to have you here in the studio.
It's exciting to see you in person.
We covered you in exile in D.C. We usually talk to you in Texas, and now you're right here in our studio.
Yes, absolutely. And just so you know, people in Texas, they remember that very first time I interviewed with you.
It was good.
They tell me about that on the campaign trail.
It was so good.
But, you know, it's interesting because I went to the Valley to campaign for Beto this past weekend. And one of the things that I said is we need to stop allowing the Republicans to take the narrative that
David suggests, hitting insurrection-curious Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin over his insurrection apologizing and downplaying of January 6th. We'll show you some of that new ad hitting the airwaves today when we come back. Don't go anywhere. To be continued. Everyone, by the way, everyone in their interview, Rosie and Lindsay mentioned Naomi. That was such a moment.
Well, Naomi was such a big star when she brought it out and talked about it, but there are thousands of Naomis in the sporting world and in the business world and the financial world and